Good morning, everybody. How are we feeling? Awesome. Yeah. I'm super excited to be here. Like Alex said, I'm from Alberta, and being part of like one of the first Canadian real estate conventions, I get to tell people I'm from Calgary, Alberta, and they actually know where that is. Like, I've been to America, and I'm like, I'm from Calgary, and they're like, oh, where's that? I'm like, Alberta, and they're like, you, huh? English? It's like, oh, it's in Canada. They're like, oh, you close to Vancouver or Toronto? I'm like, in between somewhere. So it's been cool to like tell people I'm from Calgary, and like they actually know where that is. Like, sick. So yeah, a little context about me. For those of you who don't know who I am, my name is James. I am 22 years old, based out of Calgary, Alberta, running my business, Even Creatives. I've been full-time coming up on 4 years now. And I'm positioned a little bit differently. The way I've positioned my business is we're a creative agency that specializes in luxury real estate media. So we're focused a lot on production and brand and just delivering the highest quality of service at a premium price point as well. And so if you are kind of familiar with who I am, you probably know some of my videos, but today, or in this presentation, I'm gonna take a slightly different approach and talk about how do we become a content partner with our clients? How do we help them build a brand? Because I truly believe that agents building their brands, and even builders, but anyone in the real estate industry building their brand is going to be the next most important thing, especially with all the AI content that is coming up. And so I want to talk about how we can become a content partner and kind of the key to creating intentional content that is actually going to build our clients' brands. Now, I'm going to dive into this a little bit later on in my presentation, but I just want to give kind of my definition of brand, just so we're kind of all on the same page as I go through this. Because I think brand has become this big buzzword that we don't really know what it means. The definition that I run with for brand is the associations that people make about you based off the things that you pair yourself with. And so we want to take this approach in with our clients. Now, this presentation will be covering kind of three main pillars, three topics. We're going to be going through intentional video. What does it mean to create videos that have real intention and not just, we don't just show up and shoot a video and deliver it to the client and say, see you next time. What does it mean to create something with intention? And then we'll talk about my brand framework, how I practically build brands for my clients and how you can do the same thing. And then finally, where does kind of creativity fit into all of this? So let's talk first about intentional video. When we think about the word intentional, kind of that root word there is intention. And intention is purpose. Every single video that we create for our clients needs to have a purpose. And typically what we're doing when we show up to a listing and we're shooting a video is we're trying to combine a whole bunch of different purposes into just one video, right? The agent wants to market themselves, they want to sell the house, they want to get more followers, get more views, they want to get more of their clients and all these things, and you've got all these different purposes all conglomerated into one video. And there's that quote, a jack of all trades is a master of none. And so if your video is trying to do everything, you're not going to accomplish anything. Oh, that's sick. Let's see. I don't even remember if I had a slide there. Cool. I don't think that did. All right. So let's talk about purpose and the funnel in which we can kind of create different videos. How do we become more valuable to our clients with the videos that we create? And so when we're thinking about content, there's really three different types of buckets that your content that we're creating for our clients falls into. Number one is going to be awareness content. And this is content that is going to reach people who do not know your clients, right? This is where we're maybe optimizing a little bit more for views. I wouldn't say virality, but we are trying to reach more eyeballs. Number two is consideration. And this is where, as a partner with your clients, this is where we want to help your clients become someone who is worth trusting and listening to. Right, we're following down this funnel. Someone sees the awareness content. All right, cool. They know about your client. Now we need to make sure that they become someone who is worth listening to and trusting. There's so many real estate agents out there, especially in the GTA area. I don't know how many there are. In Calgary, there's about 8,000 licensed realtors. So there's so many realtors. How do we become or help our clients become someone who's actually worth listening to? And then finally, we have our conversion content, which is at the bottom of the funnel. And this is where we're giving the viewer a reason to act, make a decision. Maybe that's selling a property. Maybe that's sending your client a message. Maybe that's giving them a follow. At the end of the day, we want them to act upon something. And so when we think about these kind of funnels of content, this also helps a lot with being able to kind of upsell your clients, because you can help them kind of create campaigns out of this. This is something I've been doing lately with a lot of clients is we go, all right, let's create 3 pieces of content instead of 1. A, I get paid more, and B, they get to see a potential bigger return on their investment because we're following through this funnel. We can create a piece of awareness content that is, again, optimized more for getting those eyeballs. We can create consideration content, which, again, is making sure that there's someone who's like, builds that credibility. And then finally, we can create conversion content, which is going to help them get results. Now, I do remember what this slide was, and it's the difference between a listing video and a listing reel, right? The horizontal versus vertical, right? Who has ever been asked by a real estate agent, hey, so what's the difference between a reel and like a listing video? Show of hands. Yeah, exactly. And how many of you have ever like struggled to explain what the actual difference is to them? Like, it's like, oh, this one's vertical and this one's horizontal, and it's like, and then they're like, why does this one chart or cost different than this one? You're like, eh. I want to just give you kind of the quick mentality behind the purpose of those 2 videos. Now, a listing reel, I like to think of it like a movie and a movie trailer, right? The listing reel is that movie trailer. If you think about the purpose of a movie trailer, simply put, it's to make the unknown known, right? A new movie's coming out, nobody's heard of it. The trailer is there to create that intention or attention and get those kind of eyeballs, build intrigue. That is the purpose of the listing reel. We want to, agent has a listing coming up, we then create a piece of content that is going to help build that intrigue. We show enough of the property to make them feel, like, ooh, this is exciting. I'd be interested in seeing this, but not enough to give them a reason to say no, right? And then if we think about a movie, the core purpose of a movie really is to make the viewer feel something, fall in love with, or create an emotional attachment or feeling. And so usually that's with, characters or story, whatever. But on the real reel, the purpose of a movie is for the director to say, hey, look at this. Look at what we were able to achieve with this movie. If you give me the money, we can do something even better with this. And so we think about our clients, these real estate agents, kind of like a director. They can then take the listing reel and they can take the listing video and use that as a campaign to then go and leverage that in future presentations. Say, hey, this is what we did for this property. Now imagine what we can do with the storytelling, with the marketing campaign for yours. Again, we're creating intentional purposes for each piece of content. So when our agents reach out to us and say, hey, I want a listing video, hey, that's awesome. But a listing video is going to get you this. But if we do a listing reel on top of that, we can upsell on top of that. We can create a bigger campaign, and we can bring them into the funnel, educate them on the different types of content, and then help them ultimately start to build their brand through content instead of just like guest posting. Because a lot of real estate videographers and media business owners are just kind of, they know how to make real estate videos, but they don't know how to make content that works. They don't understand why content performs the way that it does. So then we get into what's called CCN Fit. And this is the different types of audiences that we're talking to when we're creating content. And this can go for both like listing content, but also branding content, which has become huge lately. If any of you have ever seen or heard of like Kelsey Blevins out in I believe it's North Carolina. Like, she's blown up, and it's becoming this huge sensation with agents wanting to go ahead now and build their personal brands through content. And we have to understand different types of audiences, because this is important with creating and creating different results. So our first C here is our core audience. These are people who already follow our clients, right, our agents. They know who they are, they know what they do, they know what they talk about. Then we have the casual audience. Maybe they follow us, maybe they don't. You know, they'll watch a few pieces of content if it's good, they'll scroll if it's not. They kind of know who you are, but they don't really care. And then we got the new audience, the people who have never heard of our clients before. When we're creating content for our clients, we want to make sure that a good idea is appealing to all three. Now, you can definitely bias certain audiences with your content, right? But the purpose is to really take them from new to casual to core, right? Because the core people, at the end of the day, they're the ones who are going to end up converting. And so when we're creating content, we need to make sure, and we're building our brands or building our clients' brands, we need to make sure that we're appealing to different audiences and making sure that their content is what is actually going to hit the people that they want. Because for most agents, when they start creating content, they don't even have a core audience. Their core audience is like other agents in their market, right? Maybe that's what they want, maybe it's not. But again, you know, agents just follow each other just like out of, you know, that's just what they do. They just follow. It's like, oh, hey, what's your Instagram? Cool, follow. And that kind of becomes their core audience. But it doesn't really become the core audience that's going to, at the end of the day, make them money, which is kind of the goal that we want to achieve, is to help our clients make more money. And then we get into scripts. This is kind of the last part of intentional video, and something that I think is really important, because we've all seen the people in these massive markets, you know, South California, LA, Miami, New York. They're filming these multiple 8-figure properties, and their scripts are just kind of off the rails, right? They're pretty crazy. And then when a videographer has success with that, they then turn around and start teaching people, this is how you script content. The reality is a $50 million house is going to get views no matter what. Doesn't matter what the script is, doesn't matter if it was shot on a $5,000 camera setup or an iPhone. There is always context and nuance within that. So when we're creating scripts, we need to make sure that the scripts are in alignment with the purpose of the video. A script for an awareness piece of content is going to look different than a script for a consideration or conversion piece of content. Could be the same property, could be the same topic, but the way that we script those videos is going to be different. The scripts need to align with your purpose. And so when you're thinking about scripting and your agent is like, oh, I saw this script, I saw it blew up, this agent blew up, went viral, it's like, cool. But there's context and nuance behind that piece of content. And you have to understand, if you can take that into your approach with scripting content, whether you're using AI or not, I do strongly recommend using AI for helping you script content, not necessarily with ideation, but especially with scripts, that can be really good. But creating scripts that are going to help your client get closer to their desired outcome, which we're going to talk about a little bit more. And again, last thing with purpose is that it's much easier to track results. When you have content in different parts of the funnel, right? Awareness is going to get you more views. But now, just because a piece of awareness content doesn't go viral, doesn't mean it didn't do its job, right? A conversion piece of content is going to get significantly less views than, say, an awareness piece of content. And that's okay. And being able to help educate your clients through that process, because again, they have shiny object syndrome. They see the views, and they're like, man, my video didn't get 10,000 views. My video didn't get 100,000 views. Like, that is okay, because that's not always what we're optimizing for. So now that we kind of understand intentional content, we know how to become more of a strategist within our clients' businesses. Let's go into the real practicality of how do we actually build a brand, right? How do we build a brand that stands out? How do we help our agents stand out in their market when there are so many agents in their market, all working with the same people and producing a similar style of content? And the beauty about this framework too is you can use that on your own, in your own business for building your own brand if you so desire. But this development framework is 4 questions. And I go through this framework with every single client that comes to me that wants to build their brand, right? Now, some agents don't really want to go all in on a brand. They're more just looking for listing content. But again, I believe that brand building for agents is the next biggest thing with AI content. Little caveat that just came to my mind. I was chatting with a realtor just the other day. Not the other day, it was a few weeks ago. But we were talking, and I asked him, like, how do you see AI, implicating on your business? And we got chatting, and eventually he told me that there was an agent. I don't remember what market they were. It was in Canada, but the agent was creating these AI avatar videos of themselves. I don't know if you've seen that, because they're too lazy to learn how to get on camera themselves and hire somebody. So they're creating AI avatars of themselves to do talking head videos. And one of their clients discovered that the videos that they were seeing were AI, and they immediately started questioning the trust they had built with that realtor, because they didn't know if that realtor actually knew what they were talking about or if they just uploaded all through AI. And that really affected their brand, because all of a sudden they lost their credibility because they didn't know what was real and what wasn't. And so this brand development framework is going to help us work with our agents to create real, trustworthy brands. Now again, let's go into brand. Brand is the associations that people make about you based off the things you pair yourself with. So just to bring that back into the real world, if you think about Nike, right, the brand of Nike, some of the things that you think about are elite performance, overcoming adversity, right, competition, underdog stories, things like that. Why do we think of these attributes? Well, it's because they have paired themselves with elite athletes. Michael Jordan, Tiger Woods, Serena Williams, just to name a few. And they tell their stories, right? They go from the story of being an underdog. They overcome this adversity. They rise up to the top of the game, and now they're competing on the biggest stages of the world. And so then we associate the things that they have come or gone through with the brand of Nike. And so I don't know about you guys, but if I'm looking for a new pair of running shoes or athletic wear, I am much more inclined to buy into the brand of Nike than, say, Under Armour, because I just don't know much about them, and I can't relate with really the brand that they've built. Nike is far more prominent. And so we want to create that with our agents. We want to create a brand that people want to buy into. They don't just want to buy the house, but they want to recurringly work with our clients because they feel a connection through the brand that they've built. And so let's get into this framework. Question number 1, you want to ask your client. We kind of work our way backwards. What is your desired outcome? And you have to be specific here. All right? It's not get more business, get more followers, get more leads. Be really specific. What is it that you want to achieve? That's what we're asking our clients. Right? Maybe for some of them, they want to become the most well-known agent in their market. Maybe for some of them, they want to get invited to real estate conferences and speak on stages. Maybe for some of them, they want to kind of build a big downline and start coaching other agents. We want to be specific on what their desired outcome is. And this is a super important question, and it's super important that we put this third, all right? Because how often have you ever had an agent come to you, they're like, man, I just don't know what to post, right? And then you're like, you scrape social media, find some top performing posts, and you kind of put your own spin on it. But now that we have a desired outcome in mind, we have the associations that we need to create, this gives us a clear path on what we want or what we should, and more importantly, what we shouldn't post. If the content that your agents are kind of bringing to you, the ideas that they're bringing to you, that they want you to produce, if it's not in alignment with helping them become known for their desired outcome, they should not be posting that content, right? Every agent and their mother posts market updates. For a lot of them, that is actually not going to do them any good. And finally, question 4 is, what can you leverage? What is your agent's unfair advantage? This is where we get into the uniqueness and the individuality of their brands, right? This is where we can create a brand that stands out. Because, I mean, let's be real, a lot of us create content, we have our own style, right? When we're working with different clients, you know, the commonality there is they kind of look similar because it's our style. We probably don't have the time or want to put in the effort to create a different style for every single agent that we work with, especially if some of you guys are doing a lot of volume. There's no way that you can create individual, like unique looking content for every single agent. And so when we find out what they can leverage, what their unfair advantage is, that creates the individuality. And that's a really important thing to have, because that is what's going to make them stand out in a world, or kind of social world, of AI content. And so let's put this into kind of the real world. A little case study with one of my clients. Pedro, I've been working with Pedro for 3.5, almost 4 years, almost like right when I started. And we've really been taking this content thing seriously over the past kind of year or so. And I went through this framework with him, and I'll show you what that kind of what looked like. So first off, his desired outcome was to become the go-to realtor for Marda Loop. Now, Marda Loop is a little kind of pocket of Calgary. It's there's a little kind of commercial district, lots of cool local restaurants, whatever. And then there's kind of like 3 or 4 smaller neighborhoods around there that kind of make up this Marda Loop area. And that's where he lived, and that's where he wanted to do a lot of business. It's kind of an inner city kind of area, a lot of nice homes around kind of the $700,000 to even kind of $2 million range. And so he wanted to be the #1 realtor in that area. And so how did we position that, right? When we think of most agents, what they do, and they're like, oh, I need to create local content, or I need to just create content in general. They go on a ChatGPT, they would go, give me 50 fascinating facts about Marda Loop. ChatGPT spits out 50 facts. They maybe take their favorite 10, and then they go and they sit down at their desk. They've got like a blank wall, maybe a window behind them, and then they just regurgitate those facts. Cool, but we wanted him to be someone who like really knows the area, and not just feel like another realtor telling you about the area that they really don't know much about. So then when we get into the content, what content was going to help him become known for someone who really lives that area in order to become the #1 realtor in that Marda Loop area, is we need to become involved in the community. So instead of filming basic talking head videos, we went out into those neighborhoods and we interacted with the neighborhoods. We would walk the paths. We would talk about not just real estate related stuff, but like talk about what are some of his favorite things to do in this neighborhood, some of his favorite paths, his favorite local businesses. Heck, he even talked about the trees in the neighborhood. But those are things that are going to separate him from everyone else who doesn't understand the nuance and really the context of living in those areas. And finally, his unfair advantage was that he has personal friendships and connections with a lot of the local business owners in that area. And so we could walk into a local business owner, the owner would be behind the counter, and we'd say, hey, do you have 10 minutes that we could interview you for a little bit of content? And obviously it's like, for them, sometimes it'd be free. And we got to the point where we could start charging a few of these local businesses kind of a bit of a highlight fee. But we're able to get in contact with these local business owners, which shows everyone else, right? No other realtor can just walk into the local businesses in these areas and say, hey, to give a 5-minute, small talk about their family because they know them, and then sit down with an interview. And so then we could create that content that set him apart from everyone else. And so we had the unfair advantage of personal connections. We then got involved in the community. We built up, built up the positioning of someone who lives in the area, and now we're still kind of tracking the results, but he's in the top 5% of realtors in that area, and his goal is to be in the top 1%. And it's really cool because this framework you can take to any and every single client that you work with and create these brands. And I would recommend, I do this with my clients in person, or at the very least on Zoom, because it helps them understand, and even through this, it helps them create a brand that's not just reliant on me, right? If our agents are only creating content when we're there to do it for them, do they really have a brand? Or is their brand just reliant on us, right? We can't be responsible for all their ideation, because the point of a personal brand is that it's personal. It should be a collaborative thing where the agent can bring you ideas. We help with scripting, we help with the production and distribution, but at the end of the day, our client can still go and create their own content that's in alignment with their brand, because they have this framework and we've educated them on what it means to create intentional content for their brand and for their business. So lastly, where does creativity fit into all this? All right, we've gone through a whole bunch of heady knowledge, frameworks, all that kind of things. But at the end of the day, if you're out in the field shooting, chances are you want to be creative. You want to flex those creative muscles. And so for us as the content partner, for you as the business owner, as the videographer, or as the kind of media partner, we want to be able to leverage our creativity to give our clients an edge. And that's exactly here, is that strategy is what gives your work a purpose. Creativity is what's going to give it an edge over everyone else, right? Because just like our clients, nobody else is like you. Nobody else has your brand. Nobody else has your team with your unique abilities, capabilities, skills, and creativity. And so we can use our creativity to give our clients the edge. And that's what's going to help bring them back over and over and over, because we've gone through the purpose. We've gone through the strategy. They know that, all right, this isn't just another real estate video. This isn't just another thing it's not just a marketing expense, right? Dan was talking about spending is at an all-time low. It's last year I was charging agents egregious prices, multiple thousands of dollars in marketing for standard homes, And it's not just because the quality of the product. Your brand is not just your product. Your brand is going to be those associations. And so if you can create your own brand that stands out and it gives you that pricing power, right? I just did a campaign for a builder, $5,000 for a $2 million home for a few videos. And I walked them through everything that I just walked you through. And so it's not about just showing up and filming. And now if that's your thing, by all means, go and do that. But if you can be a creative partner in your business, not only is that going to help your clients make more money and in turn spend more money with you, but that's going to help you stand out with AI, and everyone creating AI videos, whether it's your agents or other people in this industry. This is where you create that irreplaceability, because nobody else will be able to build a brand like you. Now, that's all I have. I hope you guys got some value out of that.